Good afternoon. My name is Alex Liga. I am a student at American Military University, currently enrolled in COL498, which is the Senior Seminar in General Studies. Today I am going to be making a presentation on my final interdisciplinary research project, which is part of our graduation requirement. And I would like to welcome my professor, Catherine Broyles, along with my mentor, Colonel Kuntz, and also all of my esteemed colleagues and classmates who are also nearing graduation. The topic of the research paper that I'm going to be doing a presentation on today was the Fetterman Massacre, which was an event that took place in 1866 on December 21st. It was where 81 service members were killed by a band of Sioux, Arapaho, and Cheyenne Native Americans. The entire attack took about 40 minutes. And what I have done for my project is construct about a 26-page research paper, which operated under the thesis question of, was it the fault of the 18th Infantry Division leadership for the massacre taking place? Now, what this research paper tries to do is not just speak directly on the topic of the thesis itself. The massacre, what it does is it tries to paint a picture of why the 18th Infantry Division was on the frozen plains of modern-day northern Wyoming, and why the Native American hostilities, some specific events, just a few of the many that are out there, why the hostilities existed, and it tries to create a broader picture of the entire condition of the 18th Infantry Division and their plight throughout the area of northern Wyoming, which we refer to as the Powder River Valley, actually. And what I would like to do, though, today is not so much focus on everything else that was happening outside of it, but actually on the Fetterman Massacre itself, just due to time constraints. On December 21st, 1866, the state of Fort Phil Kearny, which was the location of the massacre itself, was the state of the fort was very poor. They were subject to daily attacks by Native Americans. Guerrilla-style warfare was wearing the post thin. They were low on supplies. The frigid temperatures. I know I am currently living in Wyoming, and the frigid temperatures were reaching far below zero each night, and the post was very apprehensive, and there was just a feeling in the air that something big was about to happen. So on December 21st, when the daily wood train departed Fort Phil Kearny, Colonel Henry Carrington, the commander of the 18th Infantry Division, dispatched out an extra 40 personnel on the security for the wood train, which would daily trip about 5 miles from Fort Phil Kearny to what was referred to as Piney Island, which was in the southwest corner of the area of responsibility for the Fort Phil Kearny. When the wood train departed, everything seemed to be going with ease, and after they had made about 2.5 miles, the sentries along the posted along Fort Phil Kearny began wigwagging their flags back and forth, stating many Indians attacking. They had a locally devised system for various events that could occur. A few Native Americans attacking, many, etc. Now, Fort Commander Colonel Carrington elected to have Captain Powell lead the relief patrol outside of the gates. However, Captain William J. Fetterman, whom the massacre is obviously named after, elected to use his position as the senior ranking captain to request to personally lead the relief patrol. Colonel Carrington was apprehensive about doing so, but before Captain Fetterman had departed, he gave him 3 stern warnings to not cross the Lodge Trail Ridge, which was located approximately 2.5 miles to the northwest of the fort. There is a map that has been posted along with this, I should add in. So if you'd like to reference that as we're talking along, feel free to pause and do so. Captain Fetterman had departed, and shortly after departure, the sentries began signaling that the wood train was all secure. There was the Native Americans were fleeing, and they were going to continue on with their push down to Piney Island. Captain Fetterman, rather than continuing on to the wood train or returning to the fort, elected to give pursuit to the Native Americans which had attacked the said wood train. These Native Americans were a decoy. The force had attacked the wood train only to lure Captain Fetterman's patrol past the Lodge Trail Ridge, where they would be outside the range of the 12-pound howitzers that were posted at the fort, and also outside of the general view of the fort. Captain Fetterman, rather than heeding his orders, elected to immediately push north along past Lodge Trail Ridge and across Pano Creek. While he was pursuing the Native Americans, he was not aware of the other 1,500 to 2,000 Native Americans that were surrounding the valley that he was being led into. As soon as he crossed Pano Creek, the Native Americans split into 2 columns, they crisscrossed, and that was the given signal to attack the relief column that Captain Fetterman was leading of 81 men. The massacre itself was over within 40 minutes of when the wood train was actually first attacked. There were over 40,000 arrows slung during the attack on the 18th Infantry Division and Captain Fetterman's plus his 80 men that he was leading past Lodge Trail Ridge against the orders of Colonel Carrington. The Native Americans dismembered the members of the 18th Infantry Division in a brutal, grotesque fashion. Arms were removed, muscles removed from bone, every extremity cut off. Anything that you can imagine was executed on the unfortunate souls under Captain Fetterman's leadership. This was done on a religious grounds. They felt that when you reached the spirit land, as the Native Americans refer to it, if you did not have the muscles on your arms, you couldn't unsling a bow. If you were missing your legs, you could not give chase to wild game, etc. They wanted to ensure that in the afterlife, the members of the 18th Infantry Division, their enemies, would not be able to, would basically be placed into eternal suffering. This is a representation of the determination and will on the part of the Sioux, Arapaho, and Northern Cheyenne to remove the 18th Infantry Division from the Powder River Valley. While attempting to hold their ground, the 18th Infantry Division obviously did not succeed. They were armed with antique muzzle-loader rifles, and the infantry was equipped with antique muzzle-loader rifles, and the cavalry carried breech-loaded rifles, which were far better. The 2 best equipped individuals were the 2 civilians that had accompanied the relief patrol, and they were armed with 16-shot repeating Henry rifles. when they crossed Pano Creek and the attack began, the infantry was lagging behind of the cavalry, and subsequently they were not able to fight as one cohesive unit. The officers were killed early on. Captain Fetterman and Captain Brown, the two individuals leading the patrol, actually placed pistols against, or they placed revolvers against each other's heads and shot each other rather than being captured by the Native American forces to avoid the previously described decapitations. The infantry division would attempt to last out on the side of a hill, but they were unable to do so just due to terrain features and the sheer overwhelming force presented by the Native Americans. That is the brief version, very brief version of the Fetterman massacre. The bodies were discovered by Captain Powell, or excuse me, I should say, Captain Tenyak, who led the relief patrol for Captain Fetterman's relief column. He was able to load up 49 bodies on the first night that he was out there, and then the remaining 31 bodies, remained in place overnight when Colonel Carrington came out the next morning and picked up the rest of the bodies, brought them back. Due to time constraints, we can't really get a whole lot further into it than that, unfortunately. So now to answer the actual question of the thesis itself. The events of the Fetterman Massacre were very unfortunate and very historic. They were not, the Fetterman Massacre, I do not believe, was a failing on the leadership of the 18th Infantry Division. Colonel Carrington gave specific orders of not to cross the Lodge Trail Ridge. Excuse me again. You also have Captain Fetterman, who, yes, he did disobey a direct order. He was chasing a decoy. However, he did so out of bravery, but it lacked the foresight to know what would actually happen. But I don't blame so much Captain Fetterman on it. I say that a massacre of some capacity was bound to occur at Fort Phil Kearny sooner or later. There were over 1,500 to 2,000 Native Americans camped along the Powder River Valley that were bent on the destruction of a force of their United States counterparts, or the United States enemy. I believe the Fetterman Massacre was solely the result of the sheer determination and will of the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. They were determined. This is represented by the way that they decapitated the bodies, by the way that they did not choose to just pick them off one at a time, pick off one century at a time. They gathered in such a large force to give that show of force that they were going to remove the United States from the Powder River Valley. This, coupled with the fact that Colonel Carrington was furnished a peacetime force, or an occupying force, in a war setting. These two factors combined for the results of the Fetterman Massacre. It was going to happen. It was not a matter of if, it was when. And the when was executed on the terms of the Sioux, Arapaho, and Cheyenne. So this has been my research project presentation. Wish I had more time to carry out the entire paper itself, but I would like to thank you for taking the time to tune in today and watch this. Please feel free to provide any constructive or any criticism at all that you can provide for this. It is greatly appreciated. Education is always an evolving process, so I just want to again say thank you, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you again.